Welcome to Resumes for First Year Students. I'm Jessica Hartley. I'm one of the career advisors on the CSOM Career Advising team. Normally, we're in Fulton 315 in the Dean's office. Let's talk a little bit about having a strong resume and what are the three components that go into having a strong resume. Number one, organization is critical. Probably 75% of your resume is having a format that an employer can look over in a matter of 10 to 20 seconds. Everything is in its place and the person can quickly decide, making a decision on you and hopefully getting you that interview. Secondly, this is something to be thinking about for the future as a first year student, racking up your accomplishments and getting those on your resume. And one of the toughest things right now as a first year student is to figure out what accomplishments from high school to have on there moving into your sophomore year. Differentiators, what makes you unique? What are the neat things about you that an employer might find interesting and kind of can help you land that internship over other candidates? There certainly is a little bit of resume versus reality when we talk with undergraduates and help them get their language in a place that it needs to be for the resume. Many times an undergrad will say, well, I feel like I'm fluffing up my language. It's really just putting what you did in that experience into more formal written language. And that's where sometimes it can feel a little bit fluffed up. Some of the things that we're going to be talking today for first year students, what should you include from high school moving forward? And we are going to be thinking that, right now in the spring, later spring of 2020, kind of thinking a little bit more about what your resume is going to look like in the fall when you are a sophomore. We do want to take that application resume that you might have used to apply to Boston College and get that down to one page. We can talk a little bit more about interests and, what are the skills that you should have on your resume? What's relevant? What's the order of operations for that resume? Your contact information is going to go up at the top, and that can be contact information as is relevant for where you might be looking for employment. And obviously this spring, we're a lot more limited to doing virtual things. We're looking at opportunities that might be really in our backyard, like we have not always in the past have had to do. Your education section is going to come next, followed by your experience section. We're going to talk in depth about that. That's the trickiest piece to write on here. We're going to focus on activities as the next section. Volunteer experience might also be in activities, or it may be a separate section for you, depending on what you have and what you want to feature. And the last section is going to be skills and interests. So let's talk a little bit about that education section. What goes into it? At the top, you're going to have Boston College, Carroll School of Management. Your degree is Bachelor of Science in Management. Concentration in whatever that might be. If you think you might have a second major in MCAS, that's going to be written as major in communication or double major in philosophy. If you're unsure at this stage of the game, you have time, what your concentration might be, you can actually simply leave it as Bachelor of Science in Management. And employers will just love the fact that you are a business major. GPA can come next. Major GPA, a little bit less relevant for a first year student. That's largely major is your management major. So it's going to be some classes that you have taken. And as you move into the future, your concentration, again, a little bit less relevant now. It's something for later junior, senior year, having that major GPA or concentration GPA on there when you've had a couple of classes that can count towards that. The main thing here, don't round, make sure it exactly matches your degree audit. Very frequently, an employer through EagleLink, the job portal, may request your unofficial transcript. And that number has to exactly match. That's why you don't want to round. If it's out under a 3.0, you can hold off on having it on the resume for the moment. Your graduation date is going to go across your degree, May 2023. Other things that may go into this section can be honors, awards, different scholarships that you might have had, rank, Student athlete, that's applicable to you. Moving into the future, thinking about a couple years from now, your study abroad is going to go in this section. And for right now, absolutely have your high school on there. It is optional after sophomore year. If you went to a high school where you're going to have networking contacts, then certainly, you may always have your high school on your resume. And LinkedIn is a little bit different. Some people always just have their high school on their LinkedIn too. Totally up to you. What does it look like on the resume? Here's an example. Your education section on there, you can see the person included their GPA, their rank, some other society awards that they received. They're abroad, like we said, is going to go in this section. And then there's their high school. For the moment, too, if you want to have some activities that you might have done in high school, some awards that you might have received in high school, you are a first year student, by all means, it can be underneath your high school right there in the education section. Here's some sample headers. More and more students are just putting their city and state on their resume. You certainly can have your full postal address written on your resume if you wish. Students are also just doing a city and state, which is absolutely fine too as well. Whatever city and state you do have on there, if you're from Connecticut, you want to have Connecticut on there. In the future, if you're going to be staying in the Boston area, you might have Chestnut Hill, Mass on there instead. You do want to make sure that you have your email address on there as well as your cell phone, so you can see from these examples. So your experience section we're talking about is one of the hardest sections to write, and that's where we can help you out and the CSUM undergrad advising team, as well as peer advisors when we return in the fall. So the descriptions need to be short, they need to be action-oriented and specific. Right now, you guys probably have a lot of more basic jobs on there. Naturally so, having just come off of high school, you may have, again, a basic job from something that you do on campus too as well, where it's highly administrative. Absolutely fine. So here's an example of someone, rather than starting off with the responsibilities included, cut down on language, much more short and sweet bullet. The employer is going to scan that resume and they can see right on that left-hand side as they scan it, implemented as a very strong action verb. Here's another example, and this is someone who's done, a lifeguarding job. What are some of the things that can go along with that type of role? So think less about the implied information. Of course, you're going to be cleaning the pool area, monitoring the pool area, that kind of stuff. Rather than having that, think about, well, hey, have I done the lifeguard position for a couple of summers? Was I promoted? Was I supervising some of the younger high schoolers that were on schedule? Did I help out the pool manager by developing a schedule too as well? Did I help resolve conflict? All these kind of good things that the employer would not have assumed came under your experience as a lifeguard. Thinking about details, and these are details that you can employ now, depending on what you do. Definitely something to be thinking about as you move into the future. Were you selected from a large pool of candidates? Focus in on that, especially if you are going to apply to be an OL or another highly selective program on campus. Even in camp counseling, were you supervising other counselors, some of the CITs? How many campers were there on any given day? What were their ages? Maybe you worked in SAP on campus, mentioning how many applications that you might have worked with. So you can kind of see any time that you increase something good or decrease something undesirable, put that information on there. That's when employers are looking to see, did you improve something? Did you reduce something less desirable? These are all good things to have on there. If you're a student athlete, how many hours a week are you contributing to that sport? For Pulse, thinking about that as a future sophomore, that's going to be something you're taking. That's a big chunk of time to be doing. Include that information on there. Here are a couple of examples, just some snippets from different resumes to show you how you can have it on your resume. It is much more preferable. You can see there's two examples that have the two short dashes. It's a little bit easier if you're the employer. Think about what the employer might prefer, to have those nice solid bullets on there it draws the eye in, and they can much more quickly scan it. Beside that bullet, start with a strong action verb: supervised, managed. Try to steer away from, as you can see under the BC Center for Corporate Citizenship, having the assist in there. Did you do a particular aspect, looking at this bullet, of the design work? And start off with that. Designed X piece of the quarterly magazine, or designed in a team of other interns the quarterly magazine. Try to move away from that verb as much as possible. The whole name of the game is trying to give as much results-driven data as you can. So thinking about the task, what you did to solve that task, take charge of that task, and what happened as a result. And that's something, again, to be thinking about in the future. You're coming to your resume right now with much more basic jobs and having just come off of your freshman year and having your high school experience largely. That's where you want to be going for the future. This is something also to be thinking about too. Having just the right amount of bullets on there, the right amount of bullets to sell yourself for a future employer, and not having too many bullets on there that it's just simply an itemized list of every basic task that you did. Try to bring bullets together that tell the whole story behind a particular project. You can see with this one, the students started off with strong action verbs. They've quantified. They were very specific in what they did, but also yet brief in the language that they chose to use on here. And again, this is something moving into the future. This is an example of what would be 2 years from now, a junior type internship. So that's something that you're aiming towards. Being mindful of what we call space wasters. This helps get you space back on your resume. Might not feel critical now as a first-year student, but certainly, 2 years from now, when you're moving into junior, senior year, the more space you have available to play with on your resume, the more good, strong content that you can showcase on there for employers. Avoiding responsible for as initial action verbs, or other things like in order to, able to. Chop those out and jump right from action verb to action verb, or action verb to noun, as it might be. And that will help you be really strong in your communication. And again, that's something that may not always be easy for everyone to quickly be able to do on your resume. And that's why our staff is focused to help you out with that. Some number rules. We're going to talk in the next couple of slides about guidelines. These are resume rules that might not be obvious, but we're going to make sure that it's obvious for you, so that way you can sidestep these quick typos. So number rules. Numbers that are 10 and under, aside from ages or percentages, need to be written out in Word format. However, M can stand for a million and B can stand for billion, and the dollar symbol works here. Our rules. So you can have, different on-campus positions that you do during the school year. You can, include the amount of time. So again, this is where we're talking about Pulse for next year, sophomore year. Experiences in the summer are assumed to be full-time. So any past jobs, current jobs that you have on there from the summertime, it is assumed that it is a full-time role. So it does not have to be noted as such. Tense rules. This can get really tricky. So make sure that you're using past tense for everything that you have wrapped up. You are no longer involved with that experience. Things that you're currently doing can actually be all present tense, or they can actually be all past tense. You just want to be consistent with that. So within that particular role, make sure that it is all past or all present. Another thing to be mindful of is the verb tense that you would be using first person. Skipping the personal pronoun, of course, you wouldn't use I, my, our. So rather than using the verb tense manages projects, it's going to be as if you were speaking in the first person. It will be manage projects. Spacing rules. So this is where you can lose a lot of space, but a quick trick for that, again, think about that employer who might be looking at on a screen, 20 resumes in a row, which may not seem like a lot, but it can add up. Resumes where it all runs together. There's no spaces between each of your items on there. Is an employer really going to spend the time to look at it? It's a headache. No, they're probably not. They're going to move on to the next resume. This is a simple fix, putting a space between each over time. When you're an upperclassman, you have less room on the resume. That space doesn't have to be a full-blown 10-point, 11-point font. It can be something as small as 4 or 5 consistently down the page. Some other things to be thinking about too in this last section on your resume. With languages, this is applicable to foreign language. Could you do that interview in that particular language? So it's something to really think about. If you were to be tested on the spot, if that employer were to switch into Spanish or any other language, could you hold your own? Would you be able to understand the question as well as respond? So that is something to consider when having a foreign language on there. And you do want to qualify your ability in that language: fluent, proficient, and conversant. Technical skills to have on your resume is pretty hardcore technical. Microsoft Office products, particularly Excel, any of the analytics that you know behind using Facebook Business Manager, Adobe Photoshop for those folks who are interested in marketing, Python, AdWords for Google, MailChimp, being able to work with that tool. Focusing on technical. Technical does not include the soft skill stuff: public speaking, teamwork, communication. That is going to come through in the bullets above in your resume for each of the experiences that you've done, as well as the cover letter. And that's your place to really kind of tie in those soft skills. Certifications, make sure it's really relevant to the professional employer that you're applying to. So avoid the CPR, again, unless this resume is going to, a lifeguard position in the Plex. You want to kind of think about applicable things. So HubSpot, Bloomberg, Google Analytics, those would be appropriate things. Interest. So a lot of times students get really stressed out in what to include for interest. So kind of think about the nature of the employer. If you're applying to something in sports management or sports marketing, are you an avid fan of local teams to that particular team? Were you a captain in high school for a particular team? Or, other interests that you might have, trying to be as specific as possible. 99% of the time, a student will just have travel on their resume. Can you be a little bit more specific? Did you travel with your family after you graduated from high school to a couple of different countries? Do you have family in another country that you routinely visit? Those are things to think about and have on there. Otherwise, just having travel doesn't really give the employer too much to work with. Over time, the interest can be a helpful spot in having a quick place that doesn't take up a lot of room to have some of your high school leadership things on there as your sophomore or as a junior, but just be specific. Awards, so this could be a spot if you're an Eagle Scout or the Gold Award for Girl Scouts, any other awards you might have gotten or publications, all that kind of cool stuff can go right there in the awards section in this last spot. This is what it's going to look like on your resume. You can kind of see how it formats on here. You're talking about 3 or 4 lines. I've also seen students who are involved in activities, more at sort of like a membership level where they routinely attend events, but they don't want to fully have it in the activity section where an employer might be looking for a little bit more information. So activities can go here. Maybe you're just involved in Women in Business or Finance Academy and you attend meetings, but you're not in a leadership position, nor do you necessarily need to have a description. That can fall in this place. Or you get to be an upperclassman where you might have less room as well. So again, you can kind of see with the foreign language how people have qualified their ability in that language, and you can see with the technical too as well what they have on there. And with the technical, it's a keyword search thing. So making sure that you have Excel on there, Word on there, PowerPoint may seem silly. at this point in the game, 2020. However, it's a keyword search thing. You don't want the AI software the employer uses on the back end to miss any one of those keywords that might be integral to that internship. So any questions? You may also be wondering, what do I have from high school on there that's in my activities? So really kind of thinking about leadership-oriented activities and clubs that you might have done in high school is great to have on there. That's definitely something to think about. And also thinking about having it, if we kind of come out of here really quickly and come up to a previous slide, thinking about how you can be specific with it. So meaning if we go back to this lifeguard one, can you have strong bullets that go along with it? Recruited X number of students to join the yearbook club, produced a yearbook with 200 pages. So again, stuff like that that shows off your accomplishments. Over time, you're going to be taking off some of those high school activities as you get to be maybe spring semester of sophomore year, or kind of depending with this summer, maybe a little bit of a summer where big employment opportunities are not as available if things stay as they are. So we may be leaning a little bit more on high school experience to have on the resume. So make sure too that you take a look at the Career Center's page for cover letters. We really didn't talk too much about that today, but make sure you take a look at that on their page. They're going to have some excellent information about what your cover letter serves as and how that becomes important for your application. So thank you so much. And again, my name is Jessica Hartley. If you wanted to send me a rough draft of your resume or reach out for more questions, feel free to do so. I'm on the CSOM Career Advising team page. You can find me at stonejg@bc.edu. Thank you so much.